Is a major issue facing South Africa against the backdrop of low or non-existent growth and high unemployment rate and high levels of poverty. And it is in this context that BMF is celebrating its 40th anniversary. And we were fortunate enough to catch up with some of the speakers at the conference, and they include former president of the Black Management Forum, Nolitha Fakude, as well as respected business leader Sipho Nkosi. And both of them sat down with me to catch up on their presentations as well as the South African economic situation at this point. Nkosi, pleasure to have you with us. And Mayor Fakude, pleasure to be with you. Mayor President, and I think the first question should go to you, because people, I can imagine many young South Africans wonder why we still have formations such as Black Management Forum, Black Business Council, 22 years into South Africa's democracy. The Constitution is very clear about what needs to happen in South Africa, but yet people who hold top positions, who are in management positions, seem and talk like they are victims of the economic system, people that many look up to. What's going on in the economic system?
Thank you, Tim, for that question, and it's quite broad, and I think it deserves to be treated within that context. If you recall, in 1994, when South Africa got its own independence, we really attained just a part of a full independence in terms of the whole country, which was the political independence. And the economic and social development part, or independence part, we did nothing at the time. So I would say that for the last 10, 15 years, the focus, both from government, but specifically from business and black business at that, has been around driving the economic transformation change, which was neglected in 1994.
Interestingly, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking of different things that have happened now, or particularly since 1994. When we talk about empowerment or transformation, there are several communities that come to mind within the black society. It's the unions, the labor movement. Then there's the traders, the small business owners. And of course, you've got those who are empowered, running bigger companies, and professionals, management types like yourself. Are these formations speaking with one voice, and do you think that they are at loggerheads? Is there conflict, tension between them, or are they speaking to the same thing? Is the understanding of economic transformation the same?
These various groups you're talking about actually have got the same broader economic transformation agenda, which is about black economic empowerment. However, as you know, the economy has got different layers. You've got the ownership part, you've got the management executive part, you also have got the trading part, which would be your procurement, supply chain opportunities, as well as small, medium enterprise development part. And if you look at the voices that are out there, whether it's your BBC or ABASA or BMF, as well as the trading associations, they all talk to the different elements of economic transformation. And somehow, this is where we have to pull it all together as the organizations when we talk about broad-based economic transformation, because we've got to say every aspect and layer of the economy has got to reflect the demographics of the country, whether it's ownership or management, as well as procurement.
Well, an observer, Nkosi, might say that these sound like fragmented voices, right? And they come from the substantial majority of our society in South Africa, up to 90%. And then government is black-led government in the first place. And I've already mentioned the Constitution. Where are we failing or coming short as a people to bring about this accelerated transformation that we're talking about?
Well, if I go back in history, South Africa probably could have been a more fragmented society. What put us all together, what created this glue that and what was binding us together was the vision to fight and defeat apartheid. So at every corner of the country, the rallying call was, let's deal with apartheid and remove that. I am not sure whether post that, whether we still have that glue or focal point for the country so that we all rally behind that call. And I think that's what the BMF of today needs to grapple with. What is it that brings black people together such that they could focus on one thing? Because left alone, each and every community or section or grouping starts to look at its own needs. And then from a group to an individual thinks of himself and herself. And therefore you have all these voices. So I think as a result of all that, even though we have the Constitution, it is critical that various groupings organize themselves so that they know what it is that drive them. I mean, there's lots of work that we need to do in ensuring that we are at the helm and in control of this country, particularly on the economic side. And that's not going to happen if we are not organized, if we don't think strategically. If we remain as we are, everyone is going to come and influence us differently. So I see the organizations like the BMF being important. I see BBC, I see all of them. Yes, it's quite unusual for a country to have all that. But I don't think we are organized enough such that we know what it is that, we know what we want. But as a collective, there are bigger visions that the country has got. For instance, what is the vision of us as black people? I work in the mining sector, of the mining sector. What is it? Do we want to control it? Do we want to influence it? What do we want out of it? That can only come if we pull our resources together and try and deal with that. And in other areas, finance, we always complain about funding of projects, funding of all the things that we do, and we say we've got no money. If we don't have money, we will run to other communities, and they could do whatever they like with us because we're not strong enough. So we need to be strong, and one of the things that are going to make us strong is if we pull together. But pulling together, there must be a focal point, which is a vision that drives us.
So where will the vision come from? From an ideological position or from conflating the interests of the different communities? What do you think? And I want to ask a follow-up question that talks about the policies that are pursued by government, for instance, that in itself, because of that fragmentation, I sometimes do sympathize with the government that they actually wonder who to prioritize, right? Because on one hand, labor would be wanting this, and the professionals that, and the business owners and shareholders something else. But is it an ideological question from you, or does it require a conflation of these different interests into one?
You cannot walk away from an ideology, because it is important in terms of your own consciousness so that you focus on something. One thing that I don't think we have as a collective is what black consciousness used to teach us. Black consciousness used to teach us that, firstly, I must love myself. The second thing, black consciousness would have taught me to love my fellow man or woman. The third thing black consciousness would have taught me, I must love my country. If those things do not exist in you, you're not likely to succeed in embracing everyone. Because when you see someone being in trouble or something happening to him or her, you will view your own fellow person or fellow man or fellow woman as an object, as opposed to being another cadre that I walk with as I fight this. So that's very important that all of us do that. But who's the leader? who's the leader? I suppose all of us are, but we need organizations like the BMF as they grapple with the thinking. What is it that could be our rallying cry as the country, as black business? And I'm very hopeful that we could come up with that.
Okay. We'll get to that in a moment. As far as the policies of government are concerned, because government most definitely is alive to the challenges of slow pace of transformation. But I suppose there could be an argument made that as much as they can push or implement certain policies, they're doing so in an environment of high unemployment rate, of high levels of poverty, and also the fact that the growth itself is almost non-existent in the economy. So they've got to be careful how they tread around these things. Are you sympathetic to the problem that government is facing in that regard?
Tim, we are very much sympathetic and alive to those issues because they are not government's issues only. They are also our issues as black people, as business leaders, and also as the country as a whole. And therefore, if you look at black economic empowerment in the context of an economy that has got to be inclusive and also that has got to provide growth so that we can have jobs, you cannot then talk about BEE as a separate process. Because if you do that, that's where you're still going to have this unemployment continuing. Who are the unemployed people? It's the black people in the majority. And what is one of the reasons why they're outside of the economy? It's not only education or skills. Some of them have got skills, some of them have got education, but they do not have access to the economic opportunities. Most black people would talk about, I don't have access to the markets, or I don't have access to the finance, or I don't even have access to be able to develop something. So we actually, when I'm saying we, government and business, we are going to have to walk a very tight balancing act for the next 10 years or so as a country to make sure that as we grow and work on growing the economy, we also include everybody in it. And that's where the policies of black economic empowerment
And here we are talking about the challenges from the perspective of the 90% of the South African nation, right? With the biggest chunk of influence in the economy being in the hands of the 10% white folks. Are they being engaged or are they coming to the party from your point of view? And I want your comment as well, in terms of dealing with the problem, the challenge, of transformation empowerment against those bigger problems that I have alluded to. Because it's almost like, we're setting ourselves as a group apart from the other 10%. And I would like to hear your views as well, Dr. Nkosi, in that regard. Go ahead.
Well, I believe that the 10% you're referring to, which is the white people of formal business, are very much interested in a South African economy that is inclusive because it's also in their own interest. And there is no business leader wherever you go who would not link their own sustainability and growth and thriving in a South African economy without including the black people in the country. So there is a commitment and an interest there. However, probably what's lacking is a broader vision that then can help frame for everyone where are we going so that they can be able to position themselves appropriately to support this initiative.
I do support what she's saying. I mean, right now, because of what is happening in the country, be it at universities, be it in terms of service delivery, be it in terms of the perception about South Africa, outside South Africa, when they look at the country. And when you look at people being demoralized, there are many questions that are coming out of not only the 10%, but broader society. But, we should also acknowledge the fact that part of the 10%, they love South Africa. They love South Africa dearly, and they would like South Africa to succeed. And it is, when I talk about the conversations that are currently happening, I attended the Joburg Indaba today and yesterday, one of the things that are critical that I've spoken about is we've had the mining charter for the last 15 years or so. What has it delivered to this country? You look at the numbers of black companies that have been created, and it's really, really not encouraging to look at that. And therefore, it says something was not done correctly. So the conversation, if you go to the Chamber of Mines today, is how can we, even before we have this conflict we're having at universities, we're having everywhere, do something about it. So the 10% and many others are there, and they are doing more work now. And I think you're going to see quite a lot of that one, because it is happening in the financial sector, it's happening everywhere. And we dare not, as citizens of this country, walk away from that, because I always say that, and I repeated this one, I'll repeat this one. South Africa is in a very fortunate position. It takes other countries 40 years, 50 years to transform and change. Within 24, 20, 25 years, we are there. We have, because of the events that are there, we are likely to make changes inside the country. So we should be utilizing that opportunity.
We're exploring a few ideas that emanate from the presentations that took place here at the BMF's 40th anniversary in Midrand, and we will be talking about now the responsibilities that go with fast-tracking this economic transformation in order to be as inclusive as possible to accommodate many young South Africans in particular and the broader economy.